Traditionally, HR was seen, and it grew out of personnel, right, and then became human resources. And so it has a legacy, and a very reputable and valuable legacy as an administrative function. Processing benefits, sort of managing intake of new employees. And those are all valuable things, but they are infinitely more transactional today because of technology. We can facilitate most of that activity through technology. So for me, as I look at HR today, I think of it as sort of a business driver. If you think about a financial plan and sort of a financial strategy, you've got to have a customer strategy, and today you darn well better have a talent strategy, and that's where HR is hopefully going.
Human resources has been changing a lot over the last 10 years, but I think in the last 5 years we've seen an acceleration of going from this transactional sort of HR lady to a really strategic partner where human resources has a seat at the table and is a true partner to the business and helping them move that business forward in terms of what's the right mix of people that we have in the companies.
As I look at the HR landscape, and if I had looked at it 10 years ago, I think the skills and the capabilities that folks needed were much more around being employee advocates and really thinking about sort of employee needs and satisfaction. Today, if I look at it, and the transition that's occurring is it's much more focused around sort of enabling employees to thrive in sort of this flexible, changing environment. So it's less about satisfaction and more about engagement in my mind. And that really requires a different skill set from our HR professionals. They need to understand business strategy, right? In a stable work environment where we were just operating in one location maybe 20, 30 years ago, you were able to just do the routine and it was fairly formulaic and process-oriented. Today, you're going into different markets. You're working with a workforce that's coming from all different environments, and really trying to create a space that's inclusive and allows people to thrive is much more focused around what is the business strategy, how do you engage employees, how do you help them understand what drives business success so that they can be fully empowered to participate in that and engage in it.
One of the most important elements of HR that I think is part of this big shift we've seen is this word culture, and we hear this all over about company culture. And as we see younger generations come into the workforce, it's the number one thing they look for in a company is it the right culture for me? So if we break that down into what does that mean, because it's a very ambiguous thing, is this idea of culture. Human resources is playing a super integral role with helping a company define what that culture is. And that will come in many forms. It could be helping the business define the behaviors. So what are the values, right? What does it feel like to work in this company? The shift in HR really happened, I think, due to several things. The economy, companies really had to start looking at their people in terms of the value they bring. A lot of companies had to downsize, so it became really apparent in who were the right players, who were the wrong players, and maybe some companies couldn't afford to have as many resources as they normally had. I think also this war on talent that was brought on by a generational shift. So we saw the millennials come into the workforce, and we know by 2020 they're going to be more than half of our available talent pool. And with that comes a lot of challenges in terms of retention. So we see businesses losing people at a much faster rate, sometimes twice the rate as we see in the past with other generations. So I think our executives became really, really hyper-focused on the numbers, which means every time we turn someone over, we lose money. And then how long does it take to ramp that person back up? So I think the shift focused from just business numbers to the talent are driving the numbers in the business, and therefore the people who are sort of stewards of that talent get a seat at the table because those numbers have more meaning now to the business.
The transformation in human resources to me comes about because of just changes in the world, right? If we look at demographics, so you're seeing this massive shift from, sort of a baby boomer generation that is very large, an X generation that's smaller, and a millennial generation that's much larger again. So, there's not a smooth transition in the workforce. There's all of a sudden a lot of younger workers needing to be in roles of leadership and other more significant roles because of just the lack of workers.
There's a huge demand in human resources right now. And if you look at any job board, you will see open roles in almost every company. And so I see that two things are happening. One is that we're seeing the economy has been picking up, so companies are back in growth mode. And so as you have more employees, you have more human resource professionals to help manage that hiring, the developing, the performance management. I also see a lot of turnover in HR because of the shift from transactional and operational to strategic. Not everybody has made it through that shift. Some people have discovered it's just not for them. Maybe the pressure's too much, and others have just wanted a change and to do something a little different.
I think it's really critical that HR professionals, young in their career, are really focusing on and developing things like business acumen, strategy, because those are the opportunities and those are what business leaders are actually asking for. They want folks that are really partners with the business today. They don't want the group that sits in a room and acts as sort of the police or the advocate, right? They really want someone who's integrated into and really understands the drivers of the business.
So human resources has a lot of different sort of sub areas within it. And obviously the larger the organization, the more you'll see these areas sort of segmented because they're so large. And so on a highest level, you've got compensation and benefits. We often call that total rewards, which is a much sexier term for in a more strategic way of saying we don't just pay people and give them medical benefits, but we really look at a reward strategy, which is a really hot topic and a really hot area to be in HR right now. That's where we see people with wonderful analytical skills, mathematic backgrounds. We've seen people move from some of the larger financial institutions that wanted to be in a human resource environment, transition really wonderfully into total rewards or comp and benefits.
In my opinion, to be in HR, you definitely need to have confidence. You're handling people's day-to-day lives, their pay, their benefits. So you really need to feel confident that when you're explaining to an employee that this is their benefit program and these are their options, that you are thorough and understanding in what you're explaining. I definitely think that you have to be personable because you are dealing with people day in and day out.
I think presentation skills is a really good start. Being really comfortable standing in front of people, obviously, and having a conversation, but preparing your ideas in a way that will hold someone's attention. We also have talent management, which is the most growing field within human resources, which is everything in an employee life cycle. How do we hire the best people? So where do we find them? What skills do we need? What cultural behaviors should we look for, and how do we measure that? How do you know you're getting that culture fit in your company? How do we onboard them? How do we manage their performance? How do we measure them? How do we reward them and promote them? So talent management really is everything within that, how that employee moves through your organization. And then you have compliance. Super important role in human resources, especially in states like California, is what is our legal obligation to the company and to the employee? How do we protect our employees and make sure that people are doing things in a way that's non-discriminatory, that makes sure every employee has a fair chance, in the organization?
Be passionate about the job you're applying for. I get thousands of resumes. I don't want the person who just wants a job because it's convenient or because it looks like they might have the skill set. I want someone who's passionate about my organization, understands the market that we're in, and really wants to contribute to that business on a daily basis.
To support the shift from a transactional job to a more strategic job, the skills for HR professionals have shifted greatly, and they've shifted really fast. And I've lived through several different HR transformations where we went from being praised for being organized and being very detail-oriented and really protecting the company from a compliance standpoint to when you get that seat at the table, you're now a consultant. And in some cases, you're a consultant for the top of the house. So if you picture sitting in a meeting, and the skills you're going to need not to take notes and take orders, but push back on the business are one of a true consultant. And so I found facilitation is actually a huge skill that many HR folks have had to learn sort of on the fly. And it's one that I think is a harder skill to learn. I found that skill of being able to influence is really, really important in HR. Whether it be you trying to get people to join your organization where there's high competition, where other companies are offering more money or more benefits, but also being able to sell your internal clients on your ideas.
Internships. explore every opportunity you have to get into an organization, because getting into the real world and actually dealing with real world problems gives you a way of critically analyzing things and experiencing that you can never get in a classroom.
I think the first thing is trying to figure out where you might fit in the human resource umbrella, what size company you want to work for. Some people love to wear a lot of hats. They are the person who likes to have their hand in everything, so smaller organizations are great. Whereas if you're someone who wants to move around and try different things or get a really good deep learning in one thing, a larger organization is great. Whereas if you're someone who is looking to change career fields entirely, and maybe an internship doesn't really make sense for you, I think if you're in an organization, you can volunteer to try to work alongside some of your HR colleagues, or you can volunteer within the community or join groups that maybe are focused on HR to get to know who the players are. Start to build your community. I think you have a better chance of really understanding where you might fit in sort of the bigger, broad umbrella of human resources.
HR is a field that is rapidly changing, and leaders have high expectations that they'll change with the business. So getting out and being hungry with sort of how they can add value to the business, taking on new challenges, being willing to step up to the plate and really bring new ideas to their executives in a tactful, meaningful way, confronting biases that exist in the organization, and really having that drive to ultimately add value to the business, and not being afraid that there's some risk in that.
One thing I've experienced in human resources when it comes to trying to figure out whether it's a right fit or not for you is that it's a really selfless job. At the end of the day, you're really there for the company and you're there for the employees. It's not the job, when you look at all the different jobs, where you're going to get high commission checks, when good things happen. You're often working behind the scenes. You're often helping people. So you've really got to know yourself and know that if you get joy by helping people, knowing that they're doing better or your executive is feeling better, and that is what makes you sleep at night or makes you feel good, then it's a great field.